Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Innovate series on the iHealth channel and iHealth Radio. Um, Today is a sequel. We've had an actual session about a month ago or so with Joan Melendez from Accelerate UDI, which we discussed a little bit of the health tech and the medical recall and medical devices recall, which was an interesting topic for me personally. And I've gotten a lot of feedback as to that it was an interesting content for many people that was really not something common of knowledge for a lot. And so we've learned a lot then. And it was so interesting that we wanted to have a second part of it. And today is that day. And we have an additional guest with us today. So, of course, we have Joan and we have Dawon.
You got it.
That's it. Dawon Hawkins, and so today we'll do a little bit of a spin on our discussion. Last time it was more of a direct interview type of thing and back and forth in exchange of discussion here. But today we're going to talk about the topic of the hour that has been on everybody's mind. You know, COVID's been around for a few months already, and everybody's where are we going with this? What's the status here? What's going on? There's a vaccine. There's no vaccine. There's different types of vaccine. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of speculations. There's a lot of deadlines that we hear about that are met or not met. There's so much going on. The world already started vaccinating somewhere. I've heard, at least we know of a few countries that already started the vaccinations and so on and so forth. But where does that fall into the current environment and the current, universe we live in specifically in the United States? And then we'll discuss also, as part of today's show, the follow-ups. Let's say the vaccine and everything is in place. What are the measures that are in place? What metrics will be there? What will be some of the countermeasures to actually ensure that there's traceability of things and catching up with records and who gets what and because it's convoluted. This is not a one deal. You just go in, get a shot, and that's it. You're out. This is like shot 1, shot 2. I've heard even shot 3. So I'm not even sure what that means. But again, we don't know what that is. And there's also different types, and we'll talk about that. I'm not the expert in this matter. And we'll get started immediately with our guests today. But before we obviously start with the topic, I just want them to introduce themselves. But today, that's exactly what we're going to be discussing. Is just the COVID vaccine, the vaccine, steps, or the COVID in general, and today's time frame, and then of course the vaccine and the next steps, and all the different scenarios that may happen in the next few weeks or a few months, and then where do we take it from there in terms of accountability, in terms of government, in terms of agencies, providers, everything, even the manufacturers. So that being said, I will open the floor to the guest, and I'm not sure who wants to get started, but it's all you. So who wants to take a lead on it?
Joan, do you want to provide a little bit of an overview or at least an introduction, and I can kind of do the theme, and then we can dive into the dialogue.
Definitely. Hi, guys. Nice to see you all again. Joan Melendez. I'm the president of XcelrateUDI. We're a novel type of application. We're a software as a service. We have that scanning component because we are all about patient safety. So we want to make sure that any medical device, tissue, anything that's used on your body or in your body, that it's traceable. Everything is supposed to have a UDI. Remember, we learned that those 3 little initials last time we were together. So we're going to get more into the COVID side, which also has medical device components to it, in addition to biologics. So, Dawon.
Yeah, Dawon Hawkins. I work with Joan more on the operations side of the business and ensuring that that we have the platform and the resources to be able to deliver this really innovative technology to the healthcare industry, and also connecting with partners out in the industry to make sure that we're doing the education, the advocacy, and most importantly have the right kind of partnerships to bring our technology to life to help make patients experience a little bit safer along the way.
All right. Well, that was the introduction. So now why don't we start talking about just the COVID in place? I mean, it's been around, it's been devastating the world. We've talked a little bit about, the concern at the time about masks and, some of the issues that were found, in terms of the utilization and the quality of those masks and so on and so forth. Today, we'll take it, I guess, to the next level. I mean, we've had the election. We met before the election. So we have a lot of stuff that occurred, since that point. And also, there's so much discussion now that we're so close to the vaccine or even in vaccine time. Like I mentioned, there are a few places that already started vaccinating. So Joan, take us a little bit on the perspective in the real marketplace as to what is going on right now.
Yeah, well, again, we're just wanting to continue that discussion about product safety. It's for us, it's really a vaccine. If you really look at a vaccine, it's managed by the Centers for Biologics. So the Centers for Biologics manages tissue. They manage any porcine, bovine, human tissue that is used in or on a person. When we're looking at that, we're looking at the fact that we're not talking about drugs, right? So
Nope.
And that's where people have to, you have to have those parameters. So when we're looking at the vaccines, it's by CBER, the Centers for Biologics. When we're looking at medical devices, that's the Centers for Radiologic Health. And then we have drugs, which is CDER, Centers for Drugs. So we have these three agencies that talk to each other.
And Joan, to be honest with you, as much as I thought I knew, I mean, I was never privy to these acronyms or these types of agencies that are somewhere within the actual realm. So that's interesting you mentioned them, because I don't think many people know about what they are and who they are.
No. So when you look at vaccines, they're managed as a biologic. So for us, when you manage a biologic, there's a lot of things that have to be checked off, especially when there are temperatures involved.
Interesting.
We have these sub-temperatures where most tissues aren't stored down to that degree of, that negative 70 degrees Celsius temperature. Bone flaps, when we in the OR will remove the cranial bone flap from a patient, we have to stick it in that type of freezer. So there's hardly anything that I'm really aware of that we keep in a hospital setting that we have those kind of freezers. So that's why you see a few months ago, everybody started buying up these negative freezers. So when we're looking at this biologic, right, we have to look at the temperature changes. We have to store at a certain temperature. We can't pull that vaccine and use it at that temperature, right? It has to thaw out. Mm-hmm. It has a time limit for thawing. It has a time limit for when you put in, especially with the Pfizer vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine has a diluent. So it has a 0.9% sodium chloride injectable additive that you have to put into the vial of the COVID vaccine. So, and this has to be in a very sterile technique. When you're putting a diluent into another vial, there's a certain, they tell you in the instructions, you have to keep a certain pressure on the vial. So when we're in trials with all of these, we're in trials with all the vaccines, the efficacy is great, right? Because it's in
the lab mode.
It's almost, it's basically a miracle that, they were able to get that high of efficacy, even though if you really look at it, it's really like 66%. But you have to really look at the FDA meeting from yesterday to really, I need to re-look at it. But a couple of the people who were on the panel, brought this up. So it was just like, wait, I need to go back and look at that. So, when we have these biologics and we have the temperatures, we have the timing. So we have, like I said, we have a 2-hour time to where we have to be able to pull it and before we can add the additive. Then we have to use it within 2 hours or something like that. And then we can't store it longer than 6 hours once it's been pulled. So the final thing is 6 hours for use. So once it's in the syringe, you have 6 hours to use it. So where's that going to get documented? How is that going to get documented? Yes, we're going to hand write it on the label. I'm going to look at the clock that may be right on the wall behind me. And then the person down is going to write it on a piece of paper. It's either going to be paper or some systems will have the ability to be able to scan. But when they're scanning, are they capturing that lot number and that expiration so that the users aren't having to type this stuff? So you have all these added needs for a biologic before you can even administer it, right? Then you can administer it in the deltoid. So again, as we start introducing more vaccines, these are going to be different, right? So the Pfizer is the only one that has a diluent. The Moderna, and I'm not pronouncing it right, so I'm sorry to the companies. They don't, and their cold storage isn't as cold. So it's going to be easier for distribution, I think, on that. But again, I haven't read the IFU which is called an instruction for use, which is what the healthcare providers, everyone who touches that has to read, in my opinion, when most people don't. So when I'm looking at that IFU, I'm reading everything. How is it going to go? How when I order it, what temperature does it have to be on until it sits on my loading dock? How am I able to trace that temperature the entire time? Because once Pfizer drops it off or it's delivered, who is then taking over tracking that temperature? When we're in a clinically controlled study, everything is to the end. Everything is tracked.
But also everything is within a protected environment. You're right there in the lab. Everything is close by, and they can monitor. But now you're commercializing it and you put it out in the public. It's a logistical nightmare. I just getting it out there. I mean, I know Pfizer is all over the world and they can actually do a lot, with that. I know with some of the logistic, like even with the FedEx and things, and then whatever personalized type of transportation they might have, they can get things, faster. But to deploy it to certain centers and have it like really in a large scale deployment, I don't know. It begs a lot of questions.
Document that.
Well, yeah.
And you have to document it all along the way.
That is crazy.
You can't just say that, okay, we're leaving the dock at Pfizer. You can't say that, okay, that's my temperature time. That's why they have those RFID tags. But my ask is, okay, Pfizer, thank you for those tags. We want to be able to hook our application into that so that we can make sure that we're then clinically making sure that that temperature until it's used is appropriate. If at any time it's out of that range, that means it's not good.
Well, so that's a big question there. I mean, we talked about potential, the environment. Everybody's skeptical about the vaccine as a whole, regardless of knowing that what you just discussed now. That this is like the more technical aspect of it. For the regular person, vaccine is okay, it's a cure, and I can get it, and that's all they're gonna see. But if it's diluted, if it's not in the right temperature, whether it's going to work or not, I mean, it varies in a lot of scope, and many folks will not even know the difference. And I'm pretty sure that even as a provider, if you're not 100% taking care of business the right way, and you administer stuff, you might not even get the results that you want for your patients. So it's a little bit of a critical process, and I think it should be given a lot more attention across all the different, between the government, the agencies, the providers themselves, the actual manufacturers. It is going to be crazy. So, and I know right now Pfizer is the one, and there are a few others.
Right now, the other one is in works, right? So, but for me, it's more that documentation. I'm okay with the distribution. That's what Warp Speed is all about. It's all about making sure that the distribution is good. The Army's involved in that. But, I think Biden said it very well. I'm worried about when it gets put in the arm. He said when it gets pulled into the syringe, which was the valid part, because all those time limits are critical, again, because, you know, you as a patient, are you going to say, okay, so what was the timing on that? I mean, I know
No,
I
but again, you know what you're looking for. The most of us will probably go, okay, get a shot, push, that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in.
No, but then, you know, so we want to make sure that everything's recorded. It's a biologic. Again, I keep on harping on this biologic thing, but it's a biologic. We have to make sure that the temperature is recorded every 15 minutes, making sure that when it hits those time limits that it's discarded, making sure that I just wasted a dose. I wasted a dose of gold. So how am I going to report that back to get it replaced? How do I make sure that I know exactly what I'm using and what I'm wasting? How do I know if I go to give a shot, the needle's broken? I have to, you know, I have to put a new one on that comes in that kit. They come with 3 needles to a kit. So, you know, but then you have to make sure you have excess. And again, all these points, you have to make sure that you have a UDI. You know, a syringe can get recalled, a needle can get recalled.
Sure.
Solution is recalled. So that diluent, there is on I don't know what brand they're using for the diluent, but it's not Pfizer said on their packaging, and they're not packaging it with their product. So I don't know if it's a Pfizer diluent or not. But there, if you look on the FDA recall site, you'll see 0.9% sodium chloride diluents that have been recalled. So, you know, a hospital can't just go, oh, I have some on the shelf, I'm just going to use what I have. No, you have to make sure that
Is it compatible?
It's been validated, you know, and that's again where our application, the scanning, we want to make sure that, you know, even those vials, we have totally tweaked our application. I don't know if that's the proper word.
Well, I mean, upgraded it.
We've upgraded it. We've upgraded it to allow for the COVID response, because we feel it is critical. And for us, it's a biologic. That's how we have to make sure we're tracking it. You know, we have medical devices and biologics that we put into patients. Drugs are a little bit differently. They're handled a little bit differently. You know, and then you get to, you know, a patient wanting to report an adverse event, or a provider, because again, the patients now have to stay there for 15 minutes. I don't think anybody knew that, you know, so what are you going to do? These patients have to wait for 15 minutes after the shot.
Wait. So I didn't know that either. So you go in to get a shot, and you have to, once you administer it, you have to wait 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Is there any reason for that? I mean, again,
you want to make sure you're not having any adverse events.
Right down, you know, then. Now, again, I mean, 15 minutes is just what they guesstimate, because it could be.
Yeah. That's what the manufacturer says. So we have to, if you want to really follow federal regulations, you have to follow the instructions for use. The instructions for use clearly state everything we've talked about, the timings. But again, and they have to be documented, but most systems aren't capable of handling all that documentation. I mean, if you're having patients wait 15 minutes, it's going to, you know, give you time to document a little too much. But again, you don't want to manually type in a lot number, you know, because you have to, especially with the Pfizer drugs, you have to do the lot number for the diluent. You have to do the lot number for the COVID vaccine. And then you have to do the UDI on the medical device. That's the way you should document.
So out of curiosity, I mean, I get the concept, you know, and it sounds like it could be done, but it's certainly a nightmare. But even the control measures and who will be able to track. I mean, there's so many potential providers of this thing, and once it's really in the public, you know, spread, I mean, everybody has to be on point. Everybody has to have the technology to be able to do that and report in real time. So there is a database that can actually, you know, kind of analyze itself, or somebody is behind it analyzing, you know, even if it's AI, to get it, you know, at that point. And that's going to be, again, I'm not sure if there's anything in place, or at least in planning. Nothing.
No. So just like with testing, our federal government said, there you go, states.
It's up to the state to
we're getting to you in warp speed time. But states, you're on your own from once you get it. and I've talked to a couple of states, so they're going to receive it and then they're going to distribute from their central place. But their worry is, Joan, we're going to get this data back in 24 hours. Sometimes they're going to be missing information. Sometimes it's going to be transposed. And, we're going to have to be going back and forth with this data. Why are we in 2020 manually documenting this stuff? And then the CDC is like, oh, we have an application out that's live, which no, it's not live for everybody. It's just for kids. Not everybody is allowed to, it's not scalable, so they're thinking this. And then they have this other application called vSafe, and there are 30 vSafe applications in the Apple Store, and vSafe is not vSafe. It has vulnerabilities. So, and it's really just a text messaging thing. So you have to report an adverse event from a patient, it's going to be a nightmare. They can go to report, by following, like here in Washington, our people have been great about doing these 90-second PSAs. I like to listen to them. They have like even a QR code so that you can scan and get more information about the vaccines. But, it's like sometimes these links die. They just go to someplace and then they don't go further. So like the adverse event reporting link doesn't work. And then once you find it, it's a PDF. So as a patient, am I going to print that out and fill it out? No, I'm just going to deal with having the adverse event. And in order to get a vaccine or a medical device, tissue, anything, mesh, to really look at it to say, is it really helpful for the patient? You need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if a patient if it's easy for a patient and a provider to report an adverse event, they're going to do it. And then we'll have that data. And then we'll be able to see, oh, we're able to trace it back to maybe these people are having reactions because there was latex in the stoppers. You never know what it could be traced back to. Is it the vaccine? Could it be the additive? But you won't know unless you're able to do really good real-time data analytics. But people have to be able to report it easily. And that's why, with our application with medical devices, the minute we scan, we're able to report that. We've added the screens onto our application so that we can make sure that we're capturing all those time limit datas. And if there is something that is out of range, when they go to scan that bottle or that syringe the last time, right before they go to administer it into the patient, if it's outside of that time limit, it flags them that it's done. Go grab another one.
So now for the application that you provide, now that's already available, accessible to any potential provider that wants to have the real-time access and reporting.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, last time is there a cost to it? No.
Yes, for that one, yeah, there is.
For this
yeah.
one, okay.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's if we really look at the CARES Act that hopefully one of these days will get published, we are more than willing to work with our states because our states are the ones who really need to push this. Even though, we are working with some of our hospitals who are just going to, use this component, because if you are a client of ours, you just get it for free. It's just again, it's a biological.
We just got to get more clients, and then there it is.
Yeah.
They get it the default, but again, ultimately, that's what needs to happen. Some provider, or every provider that is administering the vaccine should have access to some sort of a device or application to report back in real time.
Right. It needs to be in real time. This antiquated reporting. And when you go to the FDA website, you have to read the little fine print. There are 3 different adverse event reporting portals you can click on.
But each one of them.
Make sure you click on the middle one, which says vaccine, not the top one, not the one that you're going to think you're going to. And again, when you're trying to deal with people who are not tech savvy, they're going to click on that top link because I went to the vaccine website and it directed me here to this one. I'm going to click on that top link and it's going to go to the wrong department.
So now you assuming that plenty of providers will actually utilize the app and get the data. That data will be processed in real time and submitted back to, I guess, the manufacturer, Pfizer, or whoever it is.
Yeah, it's a dashboard. So it's just like our application. They have access to that data in real time at all times. So with UDI Clearinghouse, where we have, remember, the recalls and adverse events, we have a section for manufacturers. So if a manufacturer's signed up with us, they get a custom section. So it shows any new uses and adverse events in real time. So, you know, even the states would have that real-time dashboard. And that's what we really need to, that's where we need to be. You know, because how effective are these immunizations going to be when we're, you know, they say that once we hit a certain percentage of active cases, you know, where should we really be using those vaccines? So
this is going to be an interesting, I mean, again, well, that's one, that's for Pfizer, and then they'll have to, well, that's a very, you know, just a point that came to my mind right now. So you have that's Pfizer's, you know, components. Then another manufacturer comes on, and another one, and you know, I'm not sure if they even use some foreigner, you know, type of vaccine, but if they would do, so each one of them will have different things to look for and to track. And so,
yes, definitely, yeah.
And the application will be ready to do that. But again, it's more of a data, you know, collection, right? So.
Right. And so, you know, one of the things that we do for our clients too is we help them vet out the products that they're bringing into their hospitals. Not every knee system is the same as the next, right? So we teach them how to, you know, when you go to buy a car, I like to use cars as VINs. People know their VINs. They should know their UDIs.
I know we talked about it last time, yeah?
Yeah. When you go look at a car, you have your list. You know everything about that car. You know what its pitfalls are. You go and research about that car. You know what color you can get. You have to do the same exact thing with medical devices. And what most hospitals rely on is the rep comes in, sells the system to the surgeon. The surgeon goes, I'm not going to do my surgeries here if you don't use this product. And sometimes they don't go through a vetting process. A lot of hospitals, the ones that we're working with, they are really switching to that vetting process because you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your patients. And, you know, just because technology is new doesn't always mean it's the best thing for your patient.
Well, most of businesses, in procurement, they'll take 3 bids. Even states do bids, you know, and RFPs to make sure they have multiple, you know, options available.
Yeah. You look at that. You look at, you know, like what I tell my friends, if they're ever going to go in for a knee or a hip replacement, why is the doctor using that particular system on you? Is it because of the system that he's familiar with? Or is it because he knows you're an athlete? Or he knows you do this? Because the systems react differently for your level of activity. So that's all those kind of things that patients really need to look at. Whatever goes in me, I want to research it as much as I'm researching my car.
I mean, it's important, but I think it's a responsibility for a lot of folks. It's not just, you know, so there is the buyer beware, which is the actual, you know, patient and the public. You have your providers, the ones that are actually servicing and providing the service. You have the states and legislators, and then you have obviously the manufacturers, and then you have the government agencies that run, you know, and administer this whole thing as public health. So I think it's going to be a group effort, and considering where we've been and where we are, it's going to be as I like to describe it, a vertical, you know, takeoff. You know, so it's going to be like, you know, I mean, it has been even with the concept of putting this vaccine in this time frame, the way it's been, and the way it's been tested on the fly. You know, again, there's a lot of questions, and even today, many people would probably consider taking some time before. And we talked about earlier, do I want to be in the first wave? Or do I want to wait until I see like what's going on? If there's any adverse, reaction in the first, sample of people. I mean, that's going to be a big, I guess, question mark
Yeah.
across.
And for me, like I told my team, I'm at this point after, I still need to re-review because it's always, I'm a woodworker. You're supposed to measure twice, right? And then that way you only cut once.
Like the analogy, I like it.
So, I need to re-look at everything with a fine tooth comb again. But at this point, I'm going to wait. I want to make sure that the reporting is correct because we already have those adverse events over in the UK, right? So, and I mean, they didn't test it on every single population. And I need to look at the numbers. What are the numbers? What percentages are really 95% isn't across all populations. They kind of like generalize everything. So I want to be able to look at that. So the Madeira doesn't have that additive. So for me, if I had to choose right now, I would choose that because I know there's not an introduction. Because you have to wipe the vial, you have to insert it, you have to draw air, you have to put the sodium in, you have to draw air, you have to
moving parts.
shake 10 times. Not.
You see, like again, now that practice itself, imagine how many people will be involved in it, and some people may not get the proper training. They might not even read the actual instructions correctly, or maybe that's because of the demand and the long waits and whatever. That timing will be actually faster, and maybe the effect will not be there. So
yeah, no, it kind of like the efficacy goes. You
well,
don't.
so you got a shot, but it's not going to do anything for you, and then you probably think, I got a shot, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. I got a shot, but now I'm feeling bad or worse. So
yeah, and you want to be able to, if you're great, you want to be able to report that, hey man, I had absolutely no side effects. My arm didn't even hurt. The nurse did such a good job. Whenever I go get a vaccine, because I have to have a flu shot every year. If I don't have a flu shot, I'm not able to go into any hospitals. So I have to have one. So I always hydrate. Make sure you have a lot of fluid on board. And then just, try to be relaxed. And when you get the immunization, and I've never had an adverse event to an immunization.
So to your point right now, the flu shot, I mean, how different is this vaccine from not in content, but in terms of utilization? Is it any different from the typical flu shot? I mean, or this, because it's new, it has a different hype around it.
It's I would equate it more like to a polio immunization because it's a dual dose, right?
Well, that's the other thing. This is not a one shot. So this is first dose, and then you have to come back for a second.
Yeah, and COVID is not the flu. So I don't even like to.
No. Again, I'm just talking in terms of just the vial to vial, shot to shot.
Like to, because I'd rather equate it to polio.
Worse.
That, people can go, oh.
No. I mean, again, that's the reason I'm asking. Is most people are going to think, well, what's so different? It's the same shot, just a vial, and we're going to just get it's like an insulin shot, right? You grab the vial and you just put it in you, but it's not really that.
Yeah, and then once they finish, with the clinicals, once they finish, it's ongoing, right? So in a year, they'll be able to see, if it's an annual need or if it's I think they're looking at 2 years, but it's too early to tell. They don't have.
Well, it all depends on the strains and whether there's a mutation that is rapid and how the reaction of. Vaccines
depends on which immunization you get, which vaccine you get. Yep.
Well, hopefully one day it's eradicated and there's no more need for this and everybody's good and we'll deal with the next pandemic, God forbid, but certainly, it is going to be an interesting transition right now. But the good news is, and I always try to look at the positive part of things. I mean, we're there. We're at least somewhere, compared to a month or a month and a half since the last time we spoke. And,
I'm super excited. Johnson & Johnson has a vaccine in the pipeline. There's a couple of other really good manufacturers in the pipeline as well. You
But
know,
it's also hard to be the first one to be in the marketplace, right? I mean,
yeah, well, yeah, I mean,
it's
and
always
then,
hard to be the first one because everybody
yeah,
can learn from your mistakes.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I always said this. I mean, it's in a way, it's also good to be the first one because you were there, when everybody, was still struggling, and ultimately, you can learn certainly, and people do expect that there's not going to be this is not going to be 100%, hey, success rate 100% day one, no problem.
Right,
People are willing to take that risk because I mean, just like the people who signed up for testing, I
right.
mean, they were willing to take, the trials, and luckily it worked. Again, I mean, I've heard variety of rates of success, between 65%, and I've heard at 95% in some cases. Again, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of news and media and articles that pop up, but the truth
Well,
is,
if you really want to know what I do, there, the websites that you can research to really look are, the CDC websites. There's the
yeah,
National, the Institute for Health. There's the NIH websites. You don't look at Facebook. To
oh,
go to the actual agency site and look. Go to Pfizer and look. Once they start publishing, they publish. And we'll have links on our website too, so that people can go and feel comfortable with researching. Our biggest thing is, again, patient safety. So Dawon's put together some really great programs around that that he can talk to you about. The other thing that we did say earlier, that there is a cost for our solution, but we also have a program that Dawon can explain to you for our underserved communities that we just finished putting together. So you want to speak to that, Dawon?
Yeah, happy
yes,
to. Part of our commitment in putting this organization together is really to be an advocate for patients, right? And one of the things that we know through and through is that our underrepresented minority groups and communities are the ones that are hit hardest, and they have the least access to quality care. Their financial resources that are funding their medical facilities are pale in comparison to other communities. And so for us, although to be clear, we're obviously a business, but we're a values-based business, and part of our values is around diversity and inclusion. And so we built a healthcare equity program specifically to support medical facilities that are particularly underfunded, that are particularly servicing communities of color and underrepresented communities, to offer our access to our applications, in some instances free of charge, because we recognize, and this is not unprecedented for us. When the COVID event began, we offered our UDI inventory module, which is a tool to just validate by scanning the items that are in your hospital supply, to validate the efficacy of those devices. We've started offering that for free of charge. So this is not new to us. We are definitely patients over profits, is our motto. And we really want to make sure that when it comes to accessibility to healthcare and quality healthcare, that we're doing our part to make sure that that patients aren't being put at risk unnecessarily. And we certainly don't want those that are hit the hardest to bear the brunt of this the kind of mismanagement that I would say is being placed on how the vaccine is being administered, from the point that it's delivered to the healthcare facility to the point that it's administered to the actual patient.
yeah. So that's an interesting point because I'm just coming from the payers world myself. I mean, that would be an interesting proposition to see if health plans, as partners with the medical, because insurance is going to be involved in this, and I'm not even sure if that's something that can be, I guess, approached by the insurance community or the health plans community to support that, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure the results are correct. We want to make sure that people are get their preventative care and then wind up out of the hospital unit and ICUs, right? So I think this is going to be a lot beyond that. So definitely, I mean, you guys doing a great job by offering some of the resources. but I think it can be beyond that. And certainly it's something, if someone is watching, and people are going to be watching this show from on some of my colleagues in the industry, this could be something to be interested in, and potentially, even invest in terms of an opportunity to support, some of these ventures, and bring the resources that can help the communities. So definitely something to discuss.
One of the things that's really the added benefit of our solution is that, outside of providing for patient safety in terms of the use of medical devices and biologics and vaccines, we're also talking about mitigating, legal liability risk and insurance risk. We're an intervention tool, right? And so our vision right now, our path to the marketplace is really through the healthcare provider, but we also fully recognize, and we're having conversations with medical device manufacturers and manufacturers at large, because at the end of the day, we believe that this is a shared responsibility. And in large part, you have products that are being placed in the marketplace, without the fail-safe of ensuring that before they are absolutely used with a patient, that they're safe for use. And we provide the technology that enables that to happen. So I think the long-term goal is, how do we continue to strike partnerships with medical device manufacturers, pharmaceutical manufacturers, insurance agencies, medical facilities, and local government agencies, to have a coalition around patient safety that includes policy, that also includes technology intervention to ensure compliance, to ensure appropriate documentation, to validate the efficacy of the use of those items with patients. And in turn, one of the things that we provide back is big data. We have one of what I would call is the health industry's largest data warehouse of data around medical devices, vaccine adverse events, and things of that nature, because we are tapping into all of these disparate resources that exist on the FDA's website. We get information directly from manufacturers, from the healthcare facilities with which we operate in. And what we can provide back is analytics around what are we seeing in aggregate, right? What does prevention effectiveness really look like? If you were to ask a medical device manufacturer, how many of your devices that have been recalled or have a significant adverse event have been prevented from use at the point of care, they would have no way of telling you that. And the same goes for, the vaccine makers. They would have no way of telling you the amount of waste that is created because of the ineffective use, or in some instances, the carelessness that is, or in some instances, the lack of knowledge around how to administer these vaccines. But with our technology, we are able to capture that data, help facilitate the data transfer between what's embedded within the barcodes on these supplies, and parse that directly into the health record, and capture the use data within our warehouse, so that we're able to tell the manufacturers, we're able to tell government agencies and others around what were the items that were effectively used, what were the things that were wasted, what were the things that were prevented, from use, that actually determines your ROI, right? The return on the investment for this intervention. And we're able to do that in a way that's really succinct and meaningful. And the byproduct of all of that is we're actually creating a safer environment for patients, so they don't have to think about, all of these other complexities. If you're coming in to get a COVID vaccine, you're already concerned. First of all, you're going to a healthcare facility where there's going to be a ton of other people who may or may not be already sick. So you're already putting yourself in a environment that is potentially risky for you, right? If you're going to the hospital because you think about your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents who had hip surgery, shoulder surgeries, who's had rods put in their back or in their ankles and things like that. They're not worried about the UDI on their medical device. They're not worried about, is it safe? They're trusting that their doctors are using things that would only be safe for use, not realizing that the doctors have no idea. They show up for surgery, the medical supplies are pulled from hospital supply, brought into the surgery room or procedure room on a case cart. And, when they're getting ready to do the surgery, they're saying, okay, manufacturer representative, which one of these do I need to use? And they're pointing to one and then they use it. So, I think the whole point of this is to say that, our focus is to put patients first. And one of the ways that we can do that is by providing technology that is a bridge for all of these gaps that exist in the system at the point of care.
Oh no, that's an actual eye-opening right there. And literally, as you speak, I'm thinking about, from my world, the insurance and the risk and the care. I mean, just the unnecessary cases of potential hospitalization and additional, critical care that you might, incur if things go wrong, and you could be prevent them by having the right data in advance and preventing some of these things. A lot of these procedures can be also pre-approved and authorized by health plans before they get done. So if there is some data to check before you can do that, that can be something that is a protocol in place. So I will definitely champion this on my world, and we can talk off the show on this and see what we can do on that.
Our vision really is to have a coalition of insurance companies and manufacturers and healthcare providers and government agencies that essentially uses our technology and certifies these surgical facilities or medical facilities to say this one has a certain technology in place that mitigates risk all the way up through the point of care. That's huge, because what that does, and obviously we have the data to be able to show like what is prevented from what's being used, et cetera. We have the data to be able to show, here's the return on the investment for, the quite literally the little bit that we charge on our subscriptions for these applications. We're mitigating millions per hospital in terms of legal liability risk, in terms of compliance risk, in terms of unoptimized staff workflows, because you're requiring so many of your staff workers to spend about 25% of their time, manually keying information into health records, which is riddled with errors and omissions that, for lack of a better term, dealing with staffers that are in high stress situations, that are getting pulled in a lot of different directions. So if they have to spend a half an hour, 45 minutes typing in all of this data into a patient record, but they have somebody that needs to be intubated, right? There's going to be distractions that will bleed into, inaccurate records, inaccurate billing, inaccurate care for patients. And we believe that our long-term vision is to, again, create this kind of coalition so that we have hospitals that have our solution that's in place, be certified. And that can be a place that if, you're going to have surgery or you're going to get a vaccine, and you're going to look up the website and see, are they value certified, whatever terminology that ends up being, versus another facility that's not, that may make the decision in terms of where do you go to get care. Like that, in my mind, is the long-term value add, and you mitigate just as an aside, $6 billion annually is spent specifically on faulty medical device the management of faulty medical devices alone, not even accounting for vaccine litigation. So if we can put a dent in that, imagine what we can do for overall healthcare costs if we're able to bring that down.
Improve it. Yeah.
Then you're talking about, your insurance agencies, your head of these large hospital networks, your manufacturers for medical devices and vaccines and biologics and tissues, and government agencies all having a hand in driving the overall cost of healthcare down, which ultimately benefits everyone, whether they have insurance or not. And it also greatly improves the quality of care that people are getting, when they're going in to get service.
Mm-hmm. And the other great thing too is when we're giving them this, all this data, we're also, again, it's all patient centered, right? So we're we're teamed up with a company called Track My Solution. So we bring it all the way to where if there's a recall or adverse event, we communicate that all the way through. But we need to be able to make sure that the patient knows too, right?
You beat me to the punch. I was going to ask you.
Yeah. So, so we brought in Track My Solution as our partners because they have that down. So it's free for patients. We talked about this. That's where
Yes.
your mom has got to go get registered.
I know. I haven't done it yet, but
yeah, I'll help you. But it's the same thing. So they've created, after talking to them, they're creating a whole Track My Vaccine component because again, I want my people to know the instructions for use. I want them to know the patient information. And we want people to report adverse events easily. So what we've done is because we're feeding the information to TrackMy, the patient doesn't have to fill out all that demographic information. They don't have to fill out anything about the immunization or where they got it because we get all that information. All they have to do is put what adverse event they had. Maybe 4 fields instead of 5 pages worth of documentation.
And so one of the things that makes our solution rapidly scalable, because there may be folks who are listening like, wow, this sounds really great, but they may start thinking about all the barriers. From a company perspective, we don't personally or we don't collect personal information. So about the patient. So we don't have to deal with who they are, what their personal, private information. We don't have to deal with any of that stuff because the data that we deal with is all the data that's publicly accessible, right? So all the vaccine data that's captured federally and the databases, all of the medical device data, all of that is publicly accessible, right? It's not easy to access, as Joan talked about earlier today. It's sprinkled across multiple databases, and the internet. But but we deal with that publicly accessible information, which means that our application going into different surgery centers or medical facilities, means that we don't have to worry about those other kinds of legal complexities that would tie down another perhaps larger company like an EMR or an EHR company or others that have to deal with all of that personal information that has compliance wrapped into it and oversight that's really driving like how it's used, how it's captured, how it's administered, when is it stored, when is it deleted, all of that stuff. We don't have to deal with that. We can deal with just the raw data about what did they use, when did they use it, in what facility did they use it in, and then was it used, was it wasted, was it returned to the vendor, and then what is the unique device identifier information that is attached to that, so that if we have to do tracking against it, we can provide that data that says, here is the chain of custody from the time that it left the manufacturer all the way down to the time that it was used or wasted, right? And then where we partnered with TrackMy to pick up where we leave off. They do capture kind of like the personal information, but that's an opt-in. So that's going to be an agreement with the healthcare facilities and the patient to say, yes, I agree to share my information so that when there is, or if there is a call or an issue, you can reach me. Because that's what's
it's not a real share of information. And that's where, people are, like somebody on my Facebook feed was like, oh my God, they're going to know everything about me. I'm like, no. So when we scan that medical device, like Dawon was saying, we pull in the drug from the NDC, the syringe, we do the UDI. When we're attaching that patient, when we sit on top, we bridge the EHR. So even if it's a pharmacy, we parse into their system. So that pharmacy or that hospital has their record. Our data is asking those questions, those timing questions. We're making sure that the drug is there. We have an identifier of the patient that we have communicated over to the electronic record so that if there is a problem, number one, if the patient has a problem, they can report it easily so that we can work it. If there is a recall and we have that patient ID, we can tell you, hey, there's a problem with this.
Yeah, and it's very similar. I mean, again, to your point, that's to ease the minds. I mean, yeah, most of the practices right now is patient IDs. And they are very, you don't know who's what, it just tracks in the data until you're ready for someone to give that information, as you stated, when someone is actually opt-in and they say, okay, you can share that information, that's it. So I think that is a sweet, information that people needed to hear, because to your point, people will like clip. I mean, HIPAA is a big deal, PHI is a big deal, and everybody is cautious about like, what to say, when to say it. I mean, in the insurance world, we have the same thing. Somebody enrolls in a plan and then something happens, they say, what do you do with my social security number? It's not going anywhere. It's, similarly, people have to understand that in the healthcare, there's so much protection when it comes to the patients and their patient rights and their patient information that, it's a very highly compliant, environment and regulated environment. So, but now question, I know that that's for the patients, ease of mind. Now for the providers or the customers, your customers, sometimes you think about, it's a platform, what is it going to be? Is it a big implementation? Is there anything you can tell us about that? And how easy is that for someone to really get into the network?
Yeah, so because we're no build, so we're a plug and play. We rely on the manufacturer data. We rely on that instruction for use to build those screens to say the timings. So again, if they pull the vaccine, they put the diluent in, they leave it and it's too long. If they go to use it, the timings between the actions is what's going to stop it and prevent it from being used. So on the provider side, we have the dashboard too, so that they can see exactly how many they used, how many they wasted, how many, the needle or the syringe wasn't in the kit. This is all like rapid build, right, for people. So we have absolutely no build. We rely on everything else.
And
that's why ours can go out.
And the beautiful part about our application is that for the most part, it sits in the background. For the most part, our end users, so if you think about like your nurses or your clinicians that are responsible for doing all this key work, one of the biggest pain points that they have is, I have to learn another system, or exactly. I have to key things in for one system and then key it into another system. And the beautiful part about ours is that our application it's delivered, via cloud. It sits on top of, we say that it sits on top of whatever the patient record application is, but in fact it sits behind it, because the only way that you would generally experience our application is if something is wrong. So if you're going in and you're giving somebody a shot, and before you do that, you give the items a scan. If there's nothing wrong with those things, then all the information in literally 5 seconds, instead of like 6 minutes, you writing this stuff down, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, that information goes right into the health record, and you never even see our application. And instead of you having to like click, because a lot of these systems have,
you have to log in and
you do all of that stuff, and we don't require any of that. We don't require individual user logins. It allows for the ease of use for the person that's providing care, because we've taken their workflows in consideration, and we're not adding to the workflows. We're actually eliminating steps from their process. If there is something wrong, that's when they will see our application pop up, and it may have a big warning. It'll have a kind of a vibration in the barcode scanner that says, something's up with this. And there's oftentimes an audible sound depending upon, the specific technology that's in the facility. But there's a sound, there's a visual warning and a physical warning that says something is off. And if that's the case, then it will not take any of that data and parse it into the patient record without you doing some kind of a manual override. So the beautiful part about this is that if our application is in place, then it's going to save the clinicians and the administrators so much more time, because they don't have to do all of these administrative steps and interacting with the software. They're just scanning and moving on. And that means that they're providing the quality care. It also means that they're wrapping up their cases pretty easily. They're able to turn more patients quickly. because they don't have all these administrative tasks that are bogging them down.
Wow. I mean, there's no reason for someone not to want to have the application, especially for the outcome and the ROI that they can get from it, and of course the quality of care that they can provide to their patients. So again, I will definitely keep promoting, and I do like the concept behind this and the idea, and really, and Joan and I, we had the conversation about a particular case in my personal life, and I've learned it the hard way. So it's important to actually get people aware of what these conditions are, and how, and especially now, again, we've talked more about the COVID and the vaccine, but this is beyond just that. I mean, ultimately the vaccine is going to be in place, and in about a year from now, it'll be history, hopefully, and you're just like, okay, we've been through it. Now, next item and next recall and next, whatever. But certainly, it is important for people to realize that there is good stuff available out there that can help from a provider side, to the patient's knowledge is available, and to your point earlier about creating some sort of coalition that can focus in on how to get this to the next level, and really make it like top notch, ready, and accessible at all times at a very low cost or no cost. Let's say I mean, there's always a cost, but I'm saying subsidized, and maybe other folks can get involved in this, that can really see the value of it. So
I think one of the things, just really quickly, I know one of the things that has been kind of a benefit of COVID, we've obviously had pandemic scares in years past,
sure.
And thankfully we've been able to avoid them, but now, because we've been in this experience for such a long period of time, it's unearthed and shown a light on all of these gaps that exist in our current processes that have been kind of masked over because there were so many other things going on in the healthcare industry and just the world that, we haven't had the opportunity to really get laser focused on these. And I think it's really shining a light. So when I think about conversations that we have with, CEOs, CIOs, CFOs of healthcare facilities, right? And see other COOs, it's interesting because now they're starting to say, we've got a lot of gaps that really put our facility and our patients at risk. And we've got to get a handle on this, because it's not only is it burning our people out, but it's opening us up to so much legal liability risk, because we're doing more harm than we are good. And so, for us, the blessing of it is, out of all the things that have been going on, is that it's provided an opportunity for vendors like us, who help to bridge some of these gaps that exist, to be able to say, hey, you guys don't have to figure it out. Hey, hospital ABC, you don't have to figure this out on your own, or try to tap your own technology teams to try to build something internally. We have a solution that is value tested, that's out in the marketplace. It's been on the marketplace for years, and several, hundreds of facilities around the United States. And, we're preparing ourselves to go internationally, but we've got a solution that can help bridge a lot of those gaps and alleviate a lot of those concerns, and provide you the data on the effectiveness of our solution and how that can benefit your, not only your patients, but also your bottom line.
Well, I mean, you said it best. It's a solution. It is going to make a difference, and we do need to make sure that people hear about it. I would urge everyone that is watching this and will watch this to really consider, if you are a provider, to utilize the services and the app to improve the actual processes and the care of your patients. Again, that's just my endorsement, and again, the information about the company is going to be on the description of the show, and it'll also be available publicly throughout my sources and my social media and all the others. And again, we will continue the discussions, and as things progress in the COVID world and beyond, we can certainly. There's always going to be something going on that we need to bring to the people. It's unfortunate, but it's part of life. And when you think about process improvement and innovation, you always have to go to the next level. And a year from now, your application will probably do more than what it does today, because that's how it is. You'll discover needs somewhere that need to be, tackled and addressed. and that's what it is. And if we don't do that, I mean, we'll probably be still in, Stone Age, but we've got, you know what I mean? So over time, everything gets improved, and we certainly have to look at that at all times. And so I really, I know I would love to keep you guys with me for another hour, but in terms of times we're running out. But thank you for at least taking the second shot at the channel and giving us some of your feedback here and some of your information, valuable information, I would say. It's always pleasant. And today, Dawon, you gave us a little bit more of a different spin and give us a little bit more of a flavor of a discussion about the hospital piece of it and things like that. So I want to thank you on behalf of the iHealth channel. For me personally, and of course the iHealth Radio and all our audiences, and look forward to having you guys again in the next case and the next whatever potential reason why we should be talking about more innovation, and it could be something else. It could be something that you guys are aware of that we might not be, and a lot of the folks in the public may not know. So any last comments or
I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to just talk a little bit about, the passion that we have for patient safety that I think we all share, and, giving us the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of these things that are just not as commonly known, and, shining a light on them in a way that hopefully educates your listeners and intrigues them to do a little bit more research on their own, and encourage anyone, if they have any questions, to certainly reach out to us as well.
And I will reach out to you because we do need to talk on the side about, potentially working on the insurance side, because I see there's a very good value there, and we can discuss that on the side and see what we can do there, because we always look for opportunities to increase, in terms of, the health results that we have, and obviously, we are an insurance company. We have to make sure that the
liability, right?
Well, we have liability, but also we make sure that our members typically get the best care, and we don't want them to wind up in a hospital. And so, and it's all about preventative care, especially we're a health maintenance organization type of industry, and that's what we do. And so any technology and anything that can help us, identify things in advance and basically mitigate those risks and things like that will be great. So the solution is there, and we partner with various hospitals, and I'm talking about just, I've worked multiple companies and health plans, and at every one of them we always have these discussions. What is the next thing that we can utilize and assist with? So this is something that I don't think many are privy to, and it sounds like it's not, and it's new to the industry as a whole, and so there's definitely a lot of room for improvement there and discussion. So stay tuned on that. On the personal, we'll do that on the sidebar.
Sounds good.
All right. Joan, thank you. And again,
thank you so much.
We'll talk at the next one. And, stay safe out there. Keep up the great work. And thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Thank you for watching the iHealth channel and listening on iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here. Have a great night.